LiberalViewer presents.
So, welcome to the February 24th edition of LiberalViewer Sunday Live Clip Roundup. Thanks for joining me. I've picked out the weekend's 10 best, most newsworthy clips for what should be a really educational, informative, fair use media criticism and political commentary show for you all tonight. My political comedy source will be a brief Bill Maher monologue clip, which is actually about Saturday Night Live from last week, although there is no Saturday Night Live this week. And then after that, I'll be discussing the clips from the Sunday morning news analysis shows from the big five corporate outlets of ABC, NBC, CBS, CNN, and Fox News, the so-called corporate media here in the United States. The topics I'll be covering, almost all of the clips are on my topic, Almost Mueller. I think this might have been a big focus of the corporate news media news analysis programs this morning because for most of the week there was a lot of talk that the Mueller report was about to come out, and then right around Thursday night, Friday morning, it was reported, it's not coming out. It's not coming out this week while Donald Trump is in North Korea. But I think kind of the corporate media news programs already had kind of momentum to get to report on the Mueller report, so to speak. And that's why there's so many clips on that this week. But maybe it's about to come out week after next. They said February, March. They said that was what the MSNBC and NBC were reporting months ago, and then CNN and was it the New York Times, Washington Post? I can't remember. A couple other of the big news media outlets confirmed that the Mueller report was imminent, that he was wrapping up, and well, here we are. And then I'll have a couple clips at the end on North Korea. It's actually a comparison of Fox News Sunday and Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday and Jake Tapper on CNN State of the Union, questioning Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on this lie that Donald Trump told right after the last time he met with Kim Jong-un about the threat of the nuclear threat being gone from North Korea. So those will be the last two clips. But like I said, I want to start off with a very brief Bill Maher clip talking about the Saturday Night Live clip last week, and specifically about this tweet.
Tensions in the peninsula have alleviated, but your successor...
Well, sorry that I'm trying to get the audio to work. This tweet, there we go. This tweet from Donald Trump that I also showed last week, and basically threatening Saturday Night Live. Well, I don't know what retribution means in this clip or in this tweet. I won't read it for you. I think I've kind of talked enough, and I'm ready to show a clip at this point. And so I don't know exactly who Trump was threatening with retribution there, but I think it got Alec Baldwin somewhat upset, which is one of the things that Bill Maher joked about last Friday on his monologue in this 41-second clip. I'll talk a little bit more with you about after we watch it together over here.
So Donald Trump, dealing with the emergency, spent the week golfing and poop tweeting, and you know, I was afraid this was going to happen. It's getting a little close to home for me now because he's now starting to threaten comedians. He was very upset about Saturday Night Live last week, and he said, "Why isn't there retribution?" What the fuck does that mean? Retribution for comedians? And Alec Baldwin, now who plays Trump, of course, says he now fears for his family's safety. And they were scared enough already being Alec Baldwin's family.
So that actually, I thought that was a pretty good joke from Bill Maher because of the unfortunate history that Alec Baldwin has with anger issues and divorce issues, and I can't remember what it was. He was like recorded by his daughter. I can't even remember that old story, but you can let me know if you remember what Alec Baldwin's family problems were specifically in the comments section. That's not really what I wanted to focus on. I want to talk about the main topics. Oh, and by the way, I should have mentioned you can see the entire Bill Maher monologue at a link down in the video description. Also down there, you'll see a link to my clip list of my 10 clips with typos and cryptic notes, but generally you can figure out what the clip's about and maybe where it's from, who's talking in it. And The next clip I'm going to show you, clip number 2 on the list, is the news summary from NBC's Meet the Press. Chuck Todd had a couple weird metaphors for the upcoming Mueller report. First, he had like a pregnancy metaphor, what to expect when you're expecting, on the Mueller report. And then there's this weird hurricane analogy with 3 different scenarios that I don't know exactly how accurate they are as to, I don't know. And in fact, later I'm going to show you a newsmaker clip, Representative Jim Hines, congressman from Connecticut, talking to Chuck Todd, where he specifically references this news summary. That's one of the reasons I like to show the news summaries in addition to the newsmaker clips, because the newsmakers often watch the news summaries first and then comment on them. And so here's 4.5 minutes of Chuck Todd talking about the North Korea trip a little bit, but mostly about the pregnant pause before the Mueller report you can see over here.
Sunday morning, we're going to take a look today at what to expect when you're expecting the Mueller report. From the moment Robert Mueller was appointed special counsel nearly 2 years ago, Washington has existed in a kind of political limbo. The White House has been working overtime to discredit the investigation while Democrats are dreaming of a Watergate-like gotcha moment. The wide range of expectations reminded us of those hurricane model maps with projections forecasting landfall anywhere from Florida to New York and anything from catastrophic to the benign. So we decided to track Mueller report projections. Many Democrats are hoping it's a Category 5 whopper, a direct hit on Washington, D.C., taking down President Trump and spawning more storms and tornadoes that impact other Trump confidants. That is one possibility. Another is that Hurricane Mueller sideswipes the White House and instead makes landfall on Fifth Avenue in New York, damaging only Mr. Trump's foundation and business empire. And then there's the model Republicans are hoping for, the dud of a storm that turns and goes out to sea, leaving Mr. Trump saying, "I told you so," and Democrats wet and embarrassed. Whatever happens, we know the Mueller report will not be turned over to Attorney General William Barr this week, as many had expected. When the report is made available in some form to the public, the question is, how many of our unanswered questions will finally be answered?
What do you expect from Austria?
I guess, from what I understand, that will be totally up to the Attorney General.
The Russia probe has led to indictments of 34 individuals and produced 6 guilty pleas. But as the nation waits for Robert Mueller to deliver his report on Russian influence in the 2016 election, a host of questions remain, including a number of known unknowns. Among them, Question 1. What did Mr. Trump know about the June 2016 Trump Tower meeting with Russians connected to the Kremlin? And when did he know it?
When did you learn about the Don Jr. meeting, Mr. President?
Question 2. Why did former Trump campaign chairman Paul Manafort share polling data with Russian Konstantin Kilimnik?
Here's the campaign chairman meeting with someone believed to be associated with Russian intelligence, offering polling data. Why is that being provided to the Russians? And why are they lying about it?
Did you know that Paul Manafort was sharing polling data from your campaign with the Russians?
No, I didn't know anything about it. Nothing about it.
Question 3. Was President Trump compromised by his business dealings with Russia, including attempts to build a Trump Tower in Moscow? His former lawyer and fixer, Michael Cohen, facing jail in just over 2 months, has been providing information to federal prosecutors in New York about the Trump Organization and will testify before 3 congressional committees this week.
The man doesn't tell the truth, and it's sad that I should take responsibility for his dirty deeds.
Question 4. Who directed former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's contacts with former Russian Ambassador Sergei Kislyak on sanctions in December 2016? Why did Flynn lie about the conversations? And what did Mr. Trump know about them?
Some people say he lied, and some people say he didn't lie. I mean, really, it turned out maybe he didn't lie.
Question 5. Who at the Trump campaign directed Roger Stone to get information about upcoming WikiLeaks disclosures against the Clinton campaign? And did anyone connected to the Trump campaign help WikiLeaks curate the emails? 5 days after Stone communicated with WikiLeaks through an intermediary.
Russia, if you're listening, I hope you're able to find the 30,000 emails that are missing.
And there are more questions. Will anyone else be charged? Will President Trump be subpoenaed? Why has the president obfuscated, attacked, and misdirected if he has nothing to hide? Why doesn't the president want to get to the bottom of what Russia did. And finally, the biggest question of all, was there, quote, collusion, a conspiracy between the Trump campaign and Russia?
There was no collusion, there was no obstruction, there was no anything. So that's the nice part. There was no phone calls.
The president's lawyer has been less definitive.
I never said there was no collusion between the campaign or between people in the campaign.
Yes,
I
you
have no idea if I have not. I said the President of the United States.
And joining me now are Neil Katyal, the acting Solicitor General under President Obama, and Saul Weisenberg, who was Deputy Independent Counsel under Ken Starr. Welcome to both of you.
And that's a good discussion. Neil Katyal especially wrote the independent counsel regulations that now the Attorney General Bill Barr is going to be following as when he gets the Mueller report and deciding how much of it gets released. So if you want to watch that, there's a link down in the video description, like I said, to NBC's Meet the Press, and you can watch. I usually don't take pundit clips. I usually just take the newsmaker clips because that's too meta. I don't want to be like a commentator commenting on the commentators. And one other thing, one other commentary I want to make, media criticism on that NBC Meet the Press news summary, which I thought was really good and covered the topics very thoroughly and asked a lot of good questions. A lot of good questions. In fact, how many questions did they ask? Because there was that big question at the end, was there collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia? And at the beginning, they counted up like 6 questions, and then all of a sudden, like question. I couldn't even count how many questions. You can let me know down in the comment section if you could count how many questions. Like we're waiting to get all the answers to these questions from Robert Mueller, and I don't know, maybe we'll be disappointed. I guess we'll have to see. The thing that I liked about that, like I said, is because I said before, it's very thorough coverage, especially of the Mueller investigation and some of the others. You know, it's not just Mueller, it's also the Southern District of New York and other ancillary investigations, the inaugural committee, which of all people you'll see Steve Bannon talk about in just a minute after I get through 2 more news summaries. The first one is from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, where they talk about how this week coming up, since it is This Week with George Stephanopoulos, the coming week, this week will be the North Korea summit versus the Michael Cohen testimony, because Michael Cohen is going to testify 3 different times before Congress, twice in secret, but once in public. And I think ABC may concentrate a little bit more than anyone else on that because George Stephanopoulos had that famous exclusive interview with Michael Cohen. I think this is one of the, I've been talking about this bias for the last few weeks where the news summaries will be biased towards whoever their exclusive guest is. And that's sort of true, I think, in the CNN State of the Union, though it's not an exclusive guest, that they're a little biased towards Mike Pompeo, but maybe not. I'll talk about that in the clip after this one. But I have one more criticism of ABC's This Week when they get into their pundits that I'm not going to cover at the end of this clip, but I think I've spent enough time pre-criticizing the clip. I'll show you the 1-minute news summary from ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos this morning over here.
Good morning and welcome to This Week. It is a big week ahead for the president on 2 very different fronts. Tomorrow he boards Air Force One for Vietnam, site of his 2nd summit with North Korea's Kim Jong-un, who's already on his way to Hanoi. You see him there in his armored train that's arriving in China yesterday. But just as Trump tries to strike a nuclear deal with Kim Jong-un, Michael Cohen will take the Washington spotlight. 3 days of hearings on Capitol Hill, including blockbuster public testimony in the House on Wednesday. Cohen's lawyer says he's prepared to reveal damning details of his years as Trump's attorney and fixer, promising a chilling portrait of the president. It comes as Cohen continues to cooperate with prosecutors, offering leads into possible corruption of the Trump inaugural and insurance irregularities at the Trump organization. And that investigation in New York's Southern District, just one of several probes poised to challenge the president well beyond the end of Robert Mueller's work. We start with the man leading one of those investigations, the chair of the House Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff. Congressman Schiff.
Oh, that actually wasn't the... I do have a clip of Adam Schiff coming up, but after Adam Schiff, they actually have on ABC's Dan Abrams along with Alan Dershowitz to talk about the issues, and no one ever asks Alan Dershowitz about the whole Jeffrey Epstein breaking story this week, where the Trump labor secretary was U.S. attorney in Florida, Acosta. Was it Alex Acosta? I think it's Alex Acosta. I know his last name's Acosta. That he worked out this sweetheart deal with this child molester billionaire, Jeffrey Epstein, and Alan Dershowitz was and actually still is his attorney. And they had Alan Dershowitz on talking about the whole impeachment Mueller investigation stuff, and never asked him or had him say anything about the whole Jeffrey Epstein thing. So that's the one other criticism I wanted to make of ABC, just because this is a fair use media criticism and political commentary show. That's why I get to show these copyrighted clips from the big five corporate outlets, because I'm adding my media criticism and political commentary. And I think in this next clip I don't know if this is an example of that bias where the guest they have influences the way they do the news summary. There's some coverage of Venezuela, which is actually an important story, and but you didn't really hear anything about Venezuela in the last two news summaries, but you'll hear about it in the CNN State of the Union news summary from Jake Tapper, and I think that might be because he's one of the two news programs, State of the Union and Fox News Sunday both had on Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and those are the last two clips I'm showing, and I think that may be why CNN has more information on Venezuela, because then they go right to talking to Mike Pompeo about Venezuela, as you'll see in this clip.
Hello, I'm Jake Tapper in Washington, where the State of our Union is eating our Wheaties and preparing for a wild week ahead. This could prove to be one of the most consequential weeks in the Trump presidency, which is saying something. President Trump is preparing to leave for his second summit with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, an attempt to get North Korea to denuclearize and get himself a Nobel Peace Prize. With the president abroad, his former fixer, Michael Cohen, will be testifying publicly before the House Oversight Committee. All this as the Trump administration is facing an urgent foreign policy crisis in Venezuela. The Maduro government's efforts to block delivery of humanitarian aid this weekend led to violence and reportedly at least 5 deaths. The country's president, Nicolas Maduro, vows to remain in power despite international calls for him to step down. Tomorrow, Vice President Pence will meet with opposition leader and self-declared president Juan Guaido to reiterate U.S. support. And joining me right now is Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Secretary Pompeo, thanks so much for being here.
So what do you think? Do you think that they put more Venezuela in the news summary because Mike Pompeo was a guest? You can let me know what you think down in the comment section. I don't have another news summary, really. I'm going to show you the brief news summary that started CBS's Face the Nation next, but Face the Nation rarely does a news summary. The Fox News Sunday news summary was all about North Korea. They basically only talked about the whole Mueller investigation and all that stuff with their panel. And one of their main questions, this is, and I didn't take any clips on this, but this is this was very amusing to me, and it is a definite example of Fox News bias. Their main question about the Michael Cohen testimony in Congress this week is it disrespectful to the president to have Michael Cohen testifying in Congress while the president is doing important foreign policy activities with North Korea out in Vietnam? And I don't know. I mean, it seems to be sort of a problem of the president's own making, if you ask me, but you can let me know what you think down in the comment section about that. Like I said, there's no clips on that, but that's why I'm not showing the news summary from Fox News Sunday, because it was all about North Korea anyway. Face the Nation has like a brief news summary, and you'll see it's like 30 seconds long, and it leads right into the Steve Bannon interview. So there's a brief introduction from Margaret Brennan of Face the Nation, and then they go to Seth Doane interviewing Steve Bannon, and I'm not sure whether what he says is newsworthy, important at all. But it's kind of sensational. He's saying that, like, buckle up, Buttercup, or whatever you want to call it. And he does not look good. I don't know. I don't remember how many shirts he's wearing. This is the third time I'm watching the clip, and after I watch it, this is, like I said, the introduction from Margaret Brennan, and then questioning from Seth Doane about whether Trump is going to face a primary opponent, and then apparently, if this is not edited, you'll see Steve Bannon goes into the apocalyptic next 4 or 5 months, worse than anything since the Civil War, as you'll see, and I'll discuss with you a little more. And I want to see how many shirts was Steve Bannon wearing as I watch the clip together with you over here.
With the president headed to Vietnam this week, the release of the Mueller report appears to be on hold. But speculation about what's in that report continues. Yesterday, CBS News correspondent Seth Doane spoke with former White House chief strategist Steve Bannon near the Vatican. Bannon, a critic of Pope Francis, was on the sidelines of the Papal Summit on sex abuse. We'll have a report on that conference later, but first, Seth questions Steve Bannon about the Mueller investigation.
I was someone that told the president many, many times that he should not fire James Comey, that I thought that this collusion investigation was a lot of nonsense and was going to come to naught. Now, I happen to think that the President of the United States, he had full rights and authority to fire Comey. I think you'll see a lot of stuff in the Mueller report. I believe that it'll deal with potential obstruction of justice, and I think it'll come down to decisions that people will think whether the President of the United States, as chief law enforcement officer, has the rights to make those decisions or not. But I've been pretty adamant that the collusion thing to me was always essentially a nothing burger, and that the Comey investigation should have just played out.
Looking ahead to campaign 2020, do you think President Trump will see a primary contender?
Oh, definitely. I think definitely from the center, from the Republican Party moderates, and from the left of the Republican Party.
Can he stand up to that?
I think it'll be symbolic. I don't think it'll be serious. I think we have to get through 2019. I think the next 90 days to 4 months is going to be a real meat grinder. I think
In what ways?
You have the Mueller report coming out. You have what's happening on this investigation on the inaugural committee. You have the Southern District of New York. You have other investigations going on. I mean, the pressure on the president is coming from many different angles. I think you've already seen it from what the Democrats, some of these reports they've been dropping here without telling anybody. I think that now that they control the House, they can weaponize this. They can weaponize the Mueller report. I think that 2019 is going to be the most vitriolic year in American politics since before the Civil War. And I include Vietnam in that. I think we're in for a very nasty 2019. I think what comes down the other side of that, then you can position yourself for 2020.
And you think the president can come out of 2019 in a much weaker position?
No, I think he comes out in a much more battle-hardened position. I think it's going to be a very tough 4 or 5 months for the president. I think it's for the team around him, but I think it'll get him very focused.
So what do you think? And there's even more. He's outside the Vatican in the wind, and as you can see, he's bundled up in a coat, so we can't see how many shirts he has underneath there, but my bet, at least 2. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section, and whether you think we're about to go through the most vitriolic, divisive, whatever words it was that Steve Bannon just used there, time since before the Civil War. He didn't say since the Civil War. I noticed he said since before the Civil War. So that means worse than the Civil War. I don't know. That's one of the weird things I've heard, or weird things we have to worry about, I guess, is if Trump is impeached and they actually try to remove him or whatever. I think several people, including Roger Stone at one point, talked about how it would create a civil war and go and buy your guns, and I don't know if I believe that, but it's one of those weird worries we have to have in this awful timeline we find ourselves in with the Trump presidency. And so anyway, that like you saw, there was a brief Face the Nation news summary there, and then right to the newsmaker, such as he is, Steve Bannon. Face the Nation actually had quite a bit of coverage of the scandal with the Catholic Church, which I don't have any clips from, but actually all the Face the Nation clips, I believe, are available free on YouTube at the link I put down in the video description, which goes to the Face the Nation YouTube channel. So if you're interested in hearing Face the Nation cover the problems with the Catholic Church, and I think it's only like 4 or 5 minutes long, you can check that out, which is apparently, I don't know why Steve Bannon was outside Vatican City. That makes no sense to me, but anyway, I want to move on to the next newsmaker clip that I talked about briefly when I showed the NBC Meet the Press news summary. Here you see Connecticut Congressman Jim Himes, who actually references the news summary, and he's talking about what's going to happen with the Mueller report, with the different possibilities, kind of referencing that hurricane metaphor from the NBC Meet the Press news summary. And I saw this clip a couple times. I think I even saw it replayed on MSNBC earlier, and I decided to call it like the X-Files clip, because he's saying the truth is out there. If you listen carefully, I believe you'll hear the truth is out there in this clip.
Congressman Himes, what are you looking for from this report? And is it an automatic that we're going to see at least an inquiry into impeachment?
Well, first and foremost, what I'm looking for is, a report that gets to the truth and that gets out there. And this is really important. In the preface of your show, you said Democrats are hoping for this and Republicans are hoping for that. And look, it's a political world, so I do think people have their hopes. But more than anything else, the question of the Russian interference and the possibility of collusion by the president and his people has twisted our politics into something unrecognizable for the last 2 years, including behavior on the part of the president, attacking the FBI, attacking Bob Mueller. Everything about this has become political. The way to end that, of course, is for the truth to be out there. And if that truth indicates that President Trump committed no crime, impeachable or otherwise, so be it. If it indicates that he did, that's a much more complicated world. But first and foremost, given that we've been on the edge of our seats for the last 2 years on this issue, everyone in this country needs to know what happened, and then we decide where to take it from there.
Governor, you said something in...
And if you want to see Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson answering questions from Chuck Todd, I didn't take any of his clips, but that was Jim Himes. He is on the House Intelligence Committee, and I think what he said makes some sense. And I think there was a important rebuttal to the NBC Meet the Press news summary I showed earlier, as I think I've beaten that point into the ground at this point. Beaten the point into the ground at this point. I think I've beaten the word point into the ground at this point. But the next clip I want to show is that was Jim Himes, who's on the House Intelligence Committee. But next we have Adam Schiff, who is the chair of the House Intelligence Committee. Since the Democrats took over the House of Representatives, that gave them chairmanships of all the House committees. And now Adam Schiff is in charge where Devin Nunes, a California congressman who was famous for being a stooge of the White House. He even got caught jumping out of an Uber near the White House to take orders from the Trump administration as to how to run the House Intelligence Committee to shill for Trump. So that's all over. Now we've got Adam Schiff in charge, and he is going to explain why it is we need to see what's in the Mueller report, and how he, as the chair of the House Intelligence Committee and part of the leadership of the Democratic Party, is going to make sure we know what's in the Mueller report when it comes out. And this is a crucial 3.5-minute clip of all the clips I'm showing, probably the most important clip about the almost Mueller topic, which I will discuss with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
That gets to a question about the Mueller investigation. If it turns out, as the president has said so many times, that he did not collude with the Russians to interfere in the election, but in fact he was pursuing this Trump Tower at the same time. If that's not criminal, does Mueller have a responsibility to report it or no?
He does have a responsibility to report it. And in fact, if you take the position, and I think it's a flawed one, but if you take the position that the president cannot be indicted, and the only remedy for improper, illegal, or other conduct is impeachment, then you cannot withhold that information from Congress, or essentially the president has immunity. So that cannot be allowed to be the case. Bill Barr has committed in his testimony to making as much of the report public as he can, and the regulations allow him to make it all public. And we're going to insist on it becoming public. And more than that, George, we're going to insist on the underlying evidence, because there is certain evidence that is only in the hands of the Department of Justice that we can't get any other way. There were searches conducted, for example, of Roger Stone and Paul Manafort. There's no other way to get the information that was seized except through the department. And we can't tell the country fully what happened without it.
As you know, William Barr may have quite a different view of what those regulations require than you do. They could allow him to release the entire report, but under Justice Department regulations, officials have said that if you decline to prosecute someone, then the underlying evidence should not be released.
But, George, the department has violated that policy repeatedly and extendedly, to a great extent over the last 2 years. And in fact, I've had this conversation with Rod Rosenstein and others on down at the Justice Department as they turned over thousands and thousands of pages of discovery in the Clinton email investigation, and there was no indictment in that investigation, that this was a new precedent they were setting, and they were going to have to live by this precedent, whether it was a Congress controlled by the Democrats or Republicans. So they're going to have to abide by that. And I think also, quite separate and apart from the precedent they've already set, is the intense public need to know here, which I think overrides any other consideration.
You say the Justice Department is going to have to live by that precedent, but what if they don't? What if they simply say, no, we're not going to release the underlying evidence? What options do you have?
Well, we will obviously subpoena the report. We will bring Bob Mueller in to testify before Congress. We will take it to court if necessary. And in the end, I think the department understands they're going to have to make this public. I think Barr will ultimately understand that as well. Barr comes into this job with 2 strikes against him. He applied for the job by demonstrating a bias against the Mueller investigation. Indeed, that's part of the reason he was hired. He's also not been willing to commit to following the advice of ethics lawyers. Indeed, that was part of the reason he was hired. If he were to try to withhold, to try to bury any part of this report, that will be his legacy, and it will be a tarnished legacy. So I think there'll be immense pressure not only on the department but on the Attorney General to be forthcoming.
Are you talking about public pressure? You prepared to take the administration to court?
Absolutely. We are going to get to the bottom of this. We are going to share this information with the public, and if the president is serious about all of his claims of exoneration, then he should welcome the publication of this report.
The president has said no collusion.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure Trump is going to welcome the publication of the Mueller report. But that was some assurances from Adam Schiff, as I was talking about before the clip, that we're going to see what's in the Mueller report. We're going to get to know, and he's going to use his power, and the Democrats are going to use their power so that we actually get to find out. There are a couple things in there. I don't know if you noticed. Well, one thing that's important to remember is that the excuse me, the whole investigation, the alternative universe investigation that the Republicans did in the House Intelligence Committee when they controlled the House during the last 2 years, where they said it was all about how it was a conspiracy, it's a witch hunt, and there were, Peter Strzok and Lisa Page and Andrew McCabe and all these people were conspiring against the president. And so during that whole, and if you watch Fox News, they talk about this over and over again. Because the House Intelligence Committee kept demanding all these documents about but Hillary's emails, and they didn't, and also the conspiracy against Trump, and they got all these documents on active investigations, which of course then they allegedly shared with Trump so that he could prepare his defense. Devin Nunes specifically. Well, having set that precedent, now Adam Schiff is saying, well, you shared all this ongoing investigation information with the Republican Intelligence Committee. Now you have to tell us about the Mueller report, even if it's not someone who gets indicted. And then the second thing that's kind of bogus is there's this policy in the Justice Department that a sitting president can't be indicted. So that's fact A or whatever. And then fact B is that they have a policy that if someone's not indicted, then that's called a declination. Then you don't say anything derogatory about someone who's not indicted. That's what James Comey, he broke that rule when he said derogatory things about Hillary Clinton back in July 2016 when he declined, or when the Justice Department declined to pursue any charges against her about her emails and all that stuff. Well, so point A is that you can't indict a sitting president. Point B is you don't say anything about someone you don't say anything derogatory about someone you don't indict. So does that mean ergo they are not going to say anything derogatory about the president because he can't be indicted? That would be a really bogus outcome to this whole Mueller investigation. I think you would agree. I mean, you can agree or disagree down in the comment section, but that was also sort of an underlying context of all that stuff that Adam Schiff was saying, and so I wanted to expand on that a little bit. And then speaking of that first point about the whole like alternative universe bogus conspiracy against Trump to like wiretap Trump Tower and spy on the Trump campaign for no reason. And can you hear that? Sandy's scratching herself. I will have a bonus Dash and Sandy clip at the end after I show you 3 more news clips. The first of which is one of the supposed big participants in the conspiracy against Trump in that alternative universe you see covered on Fox News. It was after Trump fired James Comey, he made the acting FBI director Andrew McCabe, who the Trump administration also fired like hours before he'd get his pension, and Trump allegedly, according to Andrew McCabe, insulted his wife in a phone call, and I don't want to go all into those details, but my show last week was right before the 60 Minutes first big exclusive interview with Andrew McCabe, and then Andrew McCabe has been like all over the news. He's been on Morning Joe, All In with Chris Hayes. He was, he was on 10 different shows this week, and he was also on ABC's This Week with George Stephanopoulos, where he said a lot of things. And, you know, the thing is, I'm not a big Andrew McCabe fan because I have a lot of skepticism of police officers. I've talked about this a lot of times. I used to be a criminal defense attorney, and Andrew McCabe he's an FBI agent. He's also a lawyer, and that's one of the reasons this next and final clip in the almost Mueller topic, this is kind of, because Andrew McCabe is a lawyer, his answer here is totally bogus, because he's talking about a legal concept, or George Stephanopoulos is asking him about a legal concept that maybe, George Stephanopoulos isn't a lawyer, so he doesn't know. But there's something called the reasonable suspicion standard, which is whether there are articulable facts making it likely that a crime, or articulable facts that mean that a crime is may be being committed. That is the reasonable suspicion standard. Sorry, I didn't get it exactly right there, but you'll see here George Stephanopoulos is asking Andrew McCabe about a Republican saying that he said something that Trump engaged in suspicious activities. And he says, I don't know what he's talking about, but... and then he gives the reasonable suspicion standard, which I'll discuss a little more after we watch that 1-minute clip together over here.
You made the decision to investigate the president, to open the investigation into the president. It's come under some criticism this week, including from Congressman Mark Meadows, who says you made a stunning admission. I want to put up his tweet right there, where you said that it was because of suspicious behavior by the president on intercept, source reporting, or other secret evidence. Congressman Meadows says that is an abuse of power.
I'm not sure what he's referring to there, but I can tell you that the information that was in our hands at the time, much of which was publicly known, caused us great concern.
You say us, but this was your decision, correct?
This was the recommendation from the investigative team, and it was ultimately my decision to authorize the opening of the case. And I did that because at the time, the facts clearly indicated that we had an articulable basis to believe that a crime may have been committed and that a threat to national security might exist. We hadn't concluded that either of those two things had happened, but we were certainly in the place that we needed to investigate both sides.
You'd make the same decision today?
Absolutely.
You're also...
Okay, so I typed that really fast. I've got exactly what he said there, that he had a articulable basis to believe that a crime may have been committed, and that a threat to national security might exist or exists. So that was the reason, and that's the reasonable suspicion standard I was talking about, that you have an articulable basis to believe that a crime may have been committed. That's Terry versus Ohio is the Supreme Court case I'm talking about. That's what gives the police the authority to go and briefly question someone, and they can also do a pat-down search if they fear for their safety. I don't want to go into all that stuff, but it just reminds me that Andrew McCabe, even though he's like on the anti-Trump side at this point, and his wife like ran for a Democratic state legislative seat in Virginia. That's why Trump insulted his wife. She lost. She got all this money from Terry McAuliffe, who's an ally of the Clintons. That's why Trump kept harping on this. If you've read his tweet stream, as like I do, he has attacked Andrew McCabe over and over again, and his wife. And apparently Andrew McCabe says in a phone call, Trump said, ask since his wife lost the race to be in the state legislature in Virginia, even though she got all this money from Terry McAuliffe in her race, who's a close ally of the Clintons. So Trump said to Andrew McCabe something like, "What? Ask her what it's like to lose. Ask her what it's like to be a loser." Something that seems like something Trump would say if you've been watching him, like I've been watching him for the last 2 years, waiting for something to happen that ends this long nightmare. Maybe it will be the Mueller report, but anyway, I have 2 more clips I want to show you before I get to the brief bonus Dash and Sandy clip I have for you at the end. That's the end of the Mueller report, almost Mueller topic. And the last 2 clips I have for you here are on the topic of Secretary of State Mike Pompeo dodges Trump lie on North Korea. And I'm going to juxtapose the way Chris Wallace on Fox News Sunday cross-examines Mike Pompeo and the way Jake Tapper does it on CNN State of the Union. And Chris Wallace does, an okay job here. He has the Trump tweet, which he actually shows, and then a Trump rally remark where he says this is all about North Korea. First, the tweet Trump said after the last summit with Kim Jong-un that the threat of the nuclear threat from North Korea is over. Or that's not the exact quote, but you'll see it in just a second. And then also there's this clip of him at the rally saying that he and Trump, that Trump is saying he and Kim Jong-un fell in love, and Kim Jong-un wrote him these beautiful letters, and you'll see Mike Pompeo totally dodges the question about Trump saying the nuclear threat from North Korea is over, and focuses totally on how great it is that Trump has a relationship with Kim Jong-un. And that is a minute and 24 seconds that I'll discuss with you a little more after we watch it together over here.
That President Trump is unrealistic about his relationship and the threat coming from North Korea. I want to make a couple of points about this. After Singapore, the president tweeted this: there is no longer a nuclear threat from North Korea. And he talks repeatedly about the strength of his relationship with Kim. Take a look here.
And we go back and forth, and then we fell in love, okay? No, really. He wrote me beautiful letters, and they're great letters. We fell in love.
Why does the president say that?
Relationships matter, Chris. They affect everything in our lives, whether it's grand strategy and denuclearization or simpler things. Relationships absolutely matter. It's important that the two leaders are able to effectively communicate. I've observed this over the past weeks and months. I've watched them exchange messages. I've watched our team understand the messages that the two leaders have provided. And now we're going to get to have a second summit where the two leaders can sit and have a frank, candid discussion, explore options, and I hope achieve what the ultimate end state is, creating a brighter future for North Korea and reducing the threat to the United States from the nuclear weapons that are today in North Korea.
Is from President Trump's point of view, is the idea of formally ending the Korean War, which we had an armistice.
So you can, I kept that playing so you can see Chris Wallace, his follow-up is about ending the war between North and South Korea. Nothing, you saw Mike Pompeo said nothing about the totally false tweet from Donald Trump and talked totally about the they're in love quote, which, and it's great that they have this great relationship, which is, I don't know, that doesn't really make me feel much better. You can let me know what you think down in the comment section about that. But I wanted to juxtapose that Fox News Sunday Chris Wallace cross-examination, which was, he showed the two clips at the beginning, but the follow-up was weak non-existent, really, as I showed, and compare it to the way Jake Tapper follows up. And it's, much more devastating to Donald Trump, and Mike Pompeo really has no response because he really focuses in on Donald Trump saying the nuclear threat is over. And I saw Mediaite had like a smaller version of this clip where they just showed Mike Pompeo claiming that Donald Trump never said it, and then Jake Tapper at the end saying, well, it's a direct quote of his tweet. And they don't show the beginning that I'm about to show you, where Jake Tapper actually points out to Mike Pompeo, Jake Tapper points out to Mike Pompeo right at the beginning of this clip that Trump tweeted that the nuclear threat from North Korea is over. And Mike Pompeo still lies about it in the middle of this minute 48-second final news clip that I will talk about a little more, if my mouth actually works correctly, after we watch it together over here.
Tensions in the peninsula have alleviated, but your successor as CIA Director, Gina Haspel, told Congress last month that North Korea is, quote, committed to developing a long-range nuclear-armed missile that would pose a direct threat to the United States. Now, President Trump, after the last summit, said, he tweeted, quote, there is no longer a nuclear threat from North Korea. Does he still believe there's no longer a nuclear threat from North Korea, even though Gina Haspel, the CIA director, says North Korea is committed to creating this missile to hit the United States?
Look, having been the CIA director not too terribly long ago, I'm very familiar with the fact pattern. We do know the history. We know the history of the North Koreans making promises, making commitments, lying, taking American money when President Clinton said, we've got this resolved back in 1994. This administration's not going to do that. We have charted a different path. Frankly, we've been criticized for taking that path, where we work, we negotiate, and then the two people who can actually effectuate the denuclearization of North Korea and a brighter future for the North Korean people will gather for a second time. We have economic sanctions in place. We know the standard for relieving those sanctions, and I'm very hopeful that we'll make a substantial step towards achieving the full denuclearization in a verifiable way in North Korea. The South Koreans, the Japanese have been great partners in this, and we're very hopeful we can get a good outcome.
Do you think North Korea remains a nuclear threat?
Yes.
But the president said he doesn't.
It's not what he said. I mean, I know precisely
he tweeted
what he said.
There is no longer a nuclear threat from North Korea.
Right. What he said is that what he said was that the efforts that had been made in Singapore, this commitment that Chairman Kim made, have substantially taken down the risk to the American people. It's the mission of the Secretary of State and the President of the United States to keep American people secure. We're aiming to achieve that.
Okay. I mean, that's just a direct quote, but I want to move on. Just a few days ago, you said sanctions against...
That's just a direct quote, but I want to move on. I thought that was awesome from Jake Tapper, and but I don't know why Mediaite didn't show the beginning, because it shows how weird the alternative Trump universe is that Mike Pompeo denied what Trump said after Jake Tapper actually directly quoted what Trump said in his tweet at the beginning of the question. It wasn't just after he claimed that Trump never said that he quoted the tweet to him. It was before. What does that say about the Trump administration? I don't know. It's pretty nasty. It's pretty, what's the opposite of truthful? It's pretty dishonest. I mean, politicians are not the most honest people to begin with, but the Trump administration is a whole different level of, as I've said before, it's like, what would happen if, like, Fox News ran the country? And I've been thinking of making a video about that because Bill Shine is working at the White House. He used to be one of the executives at Fox News until he had to leave because he covered up all the sexual harassment at Fox News and whatever. Speaking of the Catholic Church, they're really Catholic at Fox News, and I don't know why there was like sexual harassment at the Catholic Fox News, and then the Catholic Church, the whole thing you can see on Face the Nation. I don't know. Is there any connection there? It's been a long week, but it's actually going to be kind of a shorter show. I think I'm going to finish up in less than an hour this week. It was actually a short week because of President's Day. It was just a long week for me. I'm kind of tired. I've done a whole bunch of different political and nonpartisan ACLU activities this week, and I'm ready to rest, but I know first I have to thank all the people who support my videos. You can just give me a thumbs up, a supportive comment. Down in the video description, you can give me a direct contribution on Super Chat. Down in the comment section for live viewers, you can give me a direct contribution on YouTube Super Chat. Thanks to Lulu Girl for that Super Chat contribution. And then down in the video description, you can give me a direct contribution on PayPal for $5 contributors who give me their shipping address. I send out this hashtag LiberalViewer vinyl weatherproof sticker. I saw someone actually put it on the bumper of their car this week on my Twitter feed. I like that tweet from someone showing this on their bumper. And then at the $10 level, you get this ACLU Constitution with the whole Constitution in there and a Know Your Rights with the Police section at the end. And also at the $5 and $10 level on Patreon, there's a link down in the video description to become one of my patrons on Patreon. And before I finish, I promised a bonus Dash and Sandy clip. In this clip, you will see the Apple time capsule that I'm using for my Wi-Fi connection to broadcast this show in between Dash and Sandy in the 16-second clip that I will talk about with you a little more after we watch it together over here. So that's it. Right before I started the show, that's Dash and Sandy going right by the doorway there. And then down the hall where the Apple time capsule is that also has my Wi-Fi. Right now, Sandy is right here snoring. Oh no, she heard her name and she opened her eyes, but she was snoring as I was showing that clip. Like I said, thanks for joining me. I hope you appreciated the 10 clips I picked out for you. I will be back next week and every Sunday for the foreseeable future. I'm definitely working on that Turn the Supreme Court Up to 11 video. I've seen some people out there. There's actually a campaign to get it turned up to 13, but I like 11 better. And anyway, until I have time to do an edited produced video, or until next Sunday when I'll be back with more news clips and criticism and commentary, I guess I will be seeing all of you around the internet.